Close your eyes and imagine a smile that has watched the world change for 500 years. It is not a painted image, but a living mystery of light and shadow, whispering from the darkness of time. Before the fame, before the genius, there was only the sound of wind in the olive groves of Tuscany. Tonight, we are not just looking at a masterpiece. We are stepping into the mind that dreamed it. We go back to 1452, to a world where the only clock was the sun, and the only library was the earth beneath your feet. As the modern world fades away, let the quiet hills of Vinci cradle your thoughts. Here, in the stillness of the 15th century, the journey begins, not with a crown, but with a child's curiosity. In the small, stone-built village of Vinci, a child is born under the soft glow of a spring sky. His arrival is silent, tucked away from the grand registries of nobility. He is Leonardo, born to a notary and a simple peasant woman, a beginning that placed him outside the polished gates of formal society. In this era, the lack of a noble name was a closed door to many. He could not study the rigid laws of his father, nor could he sit in the cold stone halls of universities to memorize Latin verses. But for Leonardo, this exclusion was not a cage, it was an invitation. While other boys were confined to desks, he was granted the boundless freedom of the Tuscan hills. He became a student of the sun, the soil, and the secrets of the valley. Imagine the young boy wandering the jagged cliffs of Monte Albano. He does not carry heavy scrolls, only a deep, quiet attention. He watches how the morning mist clings to the vineyards, how a hawk balances on an invisible thread of air, and how the water of a mountain stream doesn't just flow, but dances in intricate spirals around every stone. To the rest of the village, these were ordinary things. To Leonardo, they were the language of God. He realized very early that nature does not speak in words. It speaks in patterns, in the mathematics of a leaf, and the geometry of a shadow. He was learning to see what others only looked at. As the sun begins to dip behind the horizon, painting the sky in shades of deep violet and amber, the world feels incredibly vast and ancient. You can almost feel the cool, damp scent of the earth rising to meet the evening air. The weight of your day begins to dissolve into this timeless landscape. There is no hurry here. There are no deadlines, only the slow, rhythmic pulse of the seasons. Let your mind drift into the softness of those green hills, where the grass is cool and the silence is a blanket. In this profound stillness, the boy's eyes remain open, capturing the flickering light of the first stars. He sees the veins of the earth, as if they were his own. He is beginning to notice the subtle textures that define existence, the way a dragonfly's wing shimmers like glass, or the way a distant mountain turns blue as the air thickens. It is within this sanctuary of observation that the seeds of a genius are planted, growing in the quiet, preparing for a path that will eventually lead him away from the familiar dirt tracks of his childhood and toward the golden, bustling heart of the Renaissance. Somewhere in the distance, a bird calls out to the night, and the world waits for what he will discover next. At the edge of the valley, a new horizon is calling, where a pair of young eyes will soon find things that no human has ever dared to imagine. The hills of Vinci do not demand your attention. They invite your presence with a gentle, timeless embrace. Imagine the feeling of cool, damp earth beneath the bare feet of a young boy, pressing into the soft, resilient moss that clings to the deep shadows of the ancient olive trees. There is a specific, intoxicating scent that fills the air after a Tuscan, rainy, delicate mixture of crushed wild rosemary, wet limestone, and the sweet, heavy perfume of the soil slowly waking up under the sun. This was Leonardo's first and most beloved classroom. There were no wooden blackboards here, no harsh, echoing voices reciting dry dates, only the rhythmic, eternal symphony of the natural world. He would spend endless hours sitting by the edge of a shallow, crystal clear stream, holding his body so perfectly still that the dragonflies would eventually forget he was there, their iridescent wings shimmering like hammered silver and blue glass in the dappled sunlight. He wasn't just looking at the water, he was studying the secret soul of its movement. He watched with bated breath the way a current curled around a jagged, submerged rock, creating tiny, perfect whirlpools that spun in silent elegance before vanishing as quickly as they appeared. He saw the hidden logic within the apparent chaos. He noticed with a quiet gasp that the delicate spiral of a snail's shell followed the exact same invisible curve as the slow unfurling of a fern frond in the damp morning mist. To him, these were not coincidences, they were the handwriting of the universe. As he climbed higher and higher into the sun-drenched cliffs, the world below would begin to soften, turning into a blurred tapestry of deep greens and shimmering gold. He would lie flat on his back, his head resting on a fragrant bed of dry, copper-colored pine needles, and simply watch the clouds drift by. To anyone else in the village, they were merely harbingers of rain or wind. But to Leonardo, they were giant, silent sculptures of moving vapor, shifting and transforming according to laws of physics he desperately wanted to decode. He would carefully catch a small beetle and hold it gently in the hollow of his palm, marveling at the mechanical precision of its iridescent shell, the way its tiny legs moved with the grace of a complex living machine. He began to understand, in the deepest part of his being, that everything in nature was connected by a golden, hidden thread of design. He spent his days in a state of constant, quiet wonder, a deep immersion that allowed him to see both the microscopic detail of a feather and the infinite stretch of the horizon all at once. In the profound silence of the forest, the boundary between the young boy and the ancient earth began to blur. He was no longer just an observer standing on the outside. He was becoming a part of the landscape itself, breathing in perfect unison with the slow rhythm of the valley, learning the heavy patience of the stone and the silent, climbing ambition of the vine. Now, let your own breath begin to settle into that very same slow, steady, and effortless rhythm. Feel the last lingering droplets of tension leaving your shoulders, as if you were resting there beside him in the high, sun-warmed grass of Tuscany. The air around you is perfectly still. The only sound is the distant, melodic hum of the summer cicadas and the faint, rhythmic rustle of the wind through the tall cypress trees. The world is safe, it is ancient, and it is deeply at peace. Your mind is becoming as clear and light as the mountain air, drifting without effort through the memories of those quiet, golden afternoons. The shadows are growing longer now, stretching across the valley floor in a soft, protective, and velvet embrace. You are exactly where you need to be, surrounded by a timeless beauty that asks absolutely nothing of you but to simply exist, to breathe, and to be still within it. But even as he sat in that profound and heavy stillness, Leonardo's mind was starting to stir with a new, restless kind of hunger. It was no longer enough to merely watch the world and whisper its secrets to himself. He felt a strange electric tingle in his fingertips, a steady pull in his heart that he could no longer ignore. Those small, sun-stained hands didn't just want to touch the life around him anymore. They felt a burning, silent, and undeniable need to recreate it. He wanted to capture the very soul of the wind, the muscle of the water, and the fleeting light of a sunset on a surface where it would never, ever fade. The observer was preparing to become the creator, before the world ever knew him as a master, long before his name was whispered with reverence in the gilded halls of kings. Leonardo was simply a young boy with a dark piece of charcoal and a silent, burning obsession. Imagine him now, crouching in the dry, sun-baked dust of a quiet country road, his small, nimble fingers tracing intricate lines in the warm earth. To anyone passing by, it might have seemed like just a child playing idly in the dirt. But if you looked closer, you would see something miraculous. He wasn't just doodling. He was capturing the exact, noble curve of a mountain goat's horn, the complex, fragile ribbing of a fallen autumn leaf, rhythmic folds of a weathered shepherd's cloak. When he ran out of earth to mark, he sought out scraps of discarded paper precious, rare fragments of parchment, and he filled them with life until not a single white space remained. His hands moved with a quiet, steady confidence that seemed to flow from somewhere deep within, a place where the world's hidden shapes were already known and understood. There was no hesitation in his stroke, no fear of the daunting blank page. He drew with the same natural, effortless ease that a tree grows toward the light or a river winds through a valley. It was as if his eyes were already seeing the invisible scaffolding of reality, and his hand was merely the faithful messenger of the truth. As the slow months turned into years, this silent practice evolved into a profound language of its own. Leonardo began to translate the three-dimensional world onto flat surfaces with a precision that was, to those who saw it, almost unsettling. He would sit for hours, perfectly still, watching a bird in mid-flight, not just noting its color, but sketching the exact tension in its powerful breast muscles, and the way the invisible air seemed to wrap around its individual feather. He was fascinated by the way light didn't just hit an object, but embraced it, creating soft, smoky transitions from brilliant brightness to deep, velvet shadow. He drew the swirling, hypnotic eddies of water, the ancient, knotted bark of massive oaks, and the subtle, flickering expressions that danced across the faces of the people in his village. He wasn't merely recording what things looked like on the surface. He was investigating how they functioned from within. Each sketch was a question asked, and an elegant answer found. His drawings possessed a strange, magnetic life of their own, a quality of presence that made the paper itself seem to breathe. You could almost feel the solid weight of the stone he sketched, the incredible softness of the animal fur, and the cool, clinging moisture of the mountain myth. In these precious, early works, there is a profound sense of harmony, a feeling that every atom is exactly where it is supposed to be. He was not just replicating the objects in front of him, nor was he simply copying the exterior of nature. In truth, Leonardo was not drawing things at all. He was drawing the very soul of movement itself. He was capturing the raw energy that flows through a leaping horse, the invisible silent force that pulls a tiny vine toward the sun, and the fleeting, ghostly transition of a smile just before it fades away. He understood, perhaps better than anyone who ever lived, that nothing in this universe is truly still, and his sketches were a way of freezing that eternal motion without killing its vibrant spirit. This mastery did not come from a shallow desire to impress, but from a deep, humble respect for the infinite complexity of creation. It is a talent so pure, so honest, and so undeniable that it creates a sense of profound trust in the observer. You realize, as you follow the graceful path of his charcoal, that you are in the hands of someone who truly, deeply sees. Let that feeling of absolute trust settle over you now, like a soft, heavy, and warm quilt on a cool, quiet night. Imagine the delicate sound of a silver point stylus moving across a smooth, specially prepared surface, a rhythmic, faint scritch-scritch that sounds like a tiny, Peaceful heartbeat in the room. Each stroke is purposeful, incredibly gentle, and slow. There is no urgency in this space, only the peaceful, drifting focus of a creator at work. The air is warm and perfectly still, scented with the faint, earthy aroma of natural beeswax and aged, heavy paper. As you listen to the rhythmic, hypnotic scratching of the pencil, feel your own thoughts beginning to smooth out, becoming as calm and clear as a sheet of untouched parchment. The lines of his drawings are like soft, silken threads, weaving together a safety net for your wandering mind. They are fluid, they are graceful, and they are infinitely kind. Each stroke of the pencil is like a gentle, rhythmic caress, smoothing away the jagged edges of your day and whispering to your weary mind that it is finally time to rest, to let go, and to dream. Every single line he drew was a bridge from the known to the unknown, a golden path that led deeper into the great mysteries of the world. But as beautiful and complete as these sketches were, they were only the beginning of a much larger story. The quiet, rolling hills of Vinci were slowly becoming a memory in the morning mist, and his horizon was expanding. His hands, now stained with the honorable dust of 1,000 drawings, were ready for something more substantial, something that would challenge his soul. The quiet hills were about to give way to the towering stone cathedrals, and the restless, bustling energy of Florence, a city of light, where his talent would no longer be a private secret, but a sun that would eventually blind even the masters who thought they had nothing left to learn. Imagine pushing open a heavy, iron-studded oak door and stepping out of the blinding Florentine sun into the cool, cavernous, and humming hive of Andrea da Verrocchio's famous workshop. The air inside is strikingly different. It is thick, golden, and intoxicating, a heady mixture of pungent linseed oil, the sharp, clean tang of turpentine, and the deep, earthy, mineral scent of freshly ground pigments like lapis lazuli, malachite, and burnt sienna. This is not just a room. It is a living cathedral of creation. Your ears begin to pick up the rhythmic, hypnotic sounds of the masters and apprentices at work. The steady, metallic clink-clink of a sharp chisel meeting cold marble. The soft, repetitive hiss of a palette knife smoothing thick oil across a seasoned wooden board, and the gentle, rhythmic, bubbling murmur of a melting wax furnace in the far corner. In this sacred space, art is not merely a dream. It is a physical labor, a beautiful, patient struggle of muscle, hand, and mind. Young Leonardo moves through this world like a silent shadow, his eyes wide and hungry, absorbing every secret from the way a heavy bronze statue is cast in glowing fire to the precise, ancient chemistry required to create a blue paint that will last for 1,000 years. As a young apprentice, his days are long and his tasks are humble. Yet he performs each one with a quiet, almost religious intensity. He spends hours and hours grinding raw minerals into fine, silk-like powders, his circular movements repetitive and soothing, like the turning of a prayer wheel in a distant temple. He washes brushes until they are as soft as a bird's down, and prepares heavy wooden panels with layer after layer of white gesso, until they are as cool and smooth as polished ivory. But Verrocchio, a master with a keen, experienced eye for greatness, soon realizes that this young man from the hills of Vinci is no ordinary student. The pivotal moment comes when Leonardo is finally asked to contribute to a major church commission, the baptism of Christ. He is assigned a single specific figure, a kneeling angel, on the far left of the grand scene, while the other apprentices might work with a hurried haste. Leonardo works with a terrifying, silent, and divine patience. He applies the translucent paint in layers so thin they are almost invisible to the naked eye, slowly building up the delicate glow of the skin and the ethereal, shimmering texture of the golden hair until the figure seems to possess its own heart, its own breath. When the painting is finally unveiled in the dim, flickering light of the studio, a profound and heavy silence falls over the entire room. Verrocchio stands before the canvas, his weathered, calloused hands trembling slightly as he stares at the angel his pupil has created. The contrast is sharp and undeniable beside the solid, traditional, and earthbound figures of the master. Leonardo's angel looks like a visitor from another realm, a being made of soft light, moist, living eyes and feathers that seem to tremble in an unseen, heavenly breeze. The realization hits the workshop like a physical wave. The student has not just learned the craft, he has completely transcended it. It is said that in that very moment, Verrocchio, one of the greatest artists in all of Italy, looked at his own brushes and then at the radiant, breathing face of the angel, and quietly decided he would never paint again. He realized that a new sun had risen in Florence, a talent so divine and so complete that the old ways of seeing were now forever a part of the past. The apprentice had captured a living soul on a piece of wood, and in doing so, he had changed the trajectory of human art forever. Now, let that soft, angelic light from the painting slowly fill the room where you are resting. Imagine it as a warm, golden, and honey-like haze that gently dissolves the walls around you. It is a light that does not burn or glare, but settles over your tired mind like the soft glow of a fading hearth on a winter's night. Feel the warmth of that Renaissance sun touching your skin, bringing a deep, resonant, and heavy sense of peace to your entire body. From your forehead down to your toes, the bustling sounds of the workshop, the rhythmic scraping of the knives, the soft, melodic whispers of the artists, all begin to recede into a distant, muffled hum, as soothing as the sound of a far-off ocean tide. You are safe. You are protected in the heart of this creative sanctuary. The air is perfectly still. The light is dimming into a soft violet dusk, and your thoughts are becoming as blurred and peaceful as the edges of a masterpiece. There is no more work to be done. The painting is finished, and the world is finally quiet. The glory of the workshop and the heartfelt praise of the master were enough to satisfy any other man. But for Leonardo, they were merely the very first steps on a path that led toward an even more distant, mysterious horizon. He often looked out of the high, arched windows of the studio at the red-tiled rooftops of Florence, watching the birds circle the great, towering Duomo, and he felt a familiar, restless tug in his soul. As much as he loved the rich scent of the paint and the brotherhood of the artists, he began to feel that the stone walls of the city were slowly closing in on him. Florence, with all of its structured beauty and its rigid rules, was becoming like a garment that had grown too small for a spirit that was starting to dream of things much larger than art, things that flew through the clouds, things that moved the heavy earth, and the hidden, silent gears that turned the very heart of the universe. The golden, familiar light of Florence slowly began to fade in Leonardo's mind as he turned his horse toward the north, toward the mist-covered endless plains of Lombardy. The year was 1482, and at 30 years old, he was carrying far more than just brushes, charcoal, and palettes in his weathered leather saddlebags. He was carrying a mind that had begun to spark with the cold, precise, and beautiful logic of iron gears and mathematics. Imagine the rhythmic, steady, and grounding thud of the horse's hooves on the dry, dusty road, a hypnotic, low-frequency beat that marks the profound transition from the soft, ethereal world of Renaissance art to the structured, unyielding, and powerful world of engineering. He was heading toward Milan, a city of heavy steel, cold armor, and iron ambition, ruled by the formidable and cunning Ludovico Sforza. To gain entry into this starkly different world, Leonardo did something that still baffles and fascinates historians to this day. He wrote a letter, perhaps the most extraordinary, audacious, and brilliant job application in the long history of human endeavor. In this letter, he did not boast of his uncanny, divine ability to capture the soul in an angel's eyes, or his unmatched mastery of light, shadow, and the human form. Instead, he presented himself as a master of the dark arts of war. He described secret, portable bridges that could be moved at a moment's notice to surprise an enemy, armored vehicles that could break any defensive line with ease, and strange, silent, subterranean tunnels that could reach the heart of a fortress unseen. He spoke of massive cannons that could throw stones like a sudden, violent storm, and specialized ships that could withstand any fire on the open sea. He laid out a breathtaking vision of a world reshaped by his mechanical will, speaking with a calculated, cold, and professional confidence that was miles away from the quiet, sun-drenched hills of his childhood in Vinci. But the true, shimmering genius of the letter lay at the very end, almost hidden in the long shadows of his grand military design. After pages of describing terrifying engines of destruction and complex defensive structures, there was a small, almost humble footnote. It was a brief, simple note stating that, in times of blessed peace, he could also paint and sculpt as well as any other man alive. For Leonardo, the art that had made him famous in the streets of Florence was now merely a secondary skill, a quiet hobby to be mentioned only after the heavy gears of war had been thoroughly discussed. He had realized that to survive and truly thrive in a world of raw political power, he had to speak the language of power itself. He was no longer just a dreamer of fleeting beauty. He was becoming a master designer of a new reality. As the road stretches out endlessly before him, winding through the quiet, silver-gray valleys toward the northern horizon, let your own mind stretch out and relax as well. The path is long, the air is cool and crisp, and the world is draped in a soft, monochromatic mist that blurs all edges. There is no noise here, no distractions, only the distant, muffled sound of the cool wind moving through the lonely mountain pass. You are traveling silently with him, leaving the familiar world behind, moving deeper and deeper into a state of profound calm and heavy, dreamless rest. The rhythmic, steady motion of the journey is pulling you further away from the waking world, sinking you into a deeper, safer layer of stillness. Everything you once knew is becoming a soft blur in the distance, and the only thing that matters now is the steady, quiet forward motion into the unknown. In Milan, the sketches in his notebooks were finally about to step off the darkened page. The city of iron was waiting for the man who could see the ghosts of machines in the empty air, ready to turn his silent, ink-stained dreams into the heavy, clanking, and magnificent reality of a new age. In the quiet, candlelit chambers of the Sforza court in Milan, Leonardo's quill moved across the parchment with a new and focused intensity that bordered on the sacred. He was no longer sketching the soft, delicate curves of a human face or the gentle flow of a silk robe. He was drafting the sharp, aggressive, and mathematical angles of a giant crossbow, a weapon so massive and imposing it required a team of 10 men just to wind its heavy, groaning gears. He drew a circular turtle-like tank covered in thick reinforced wooden planks, designed to roll effortlessly into the heart of a chaotic battlefield while spitting fire from every side. He designed scythe chariots with spinning, lethal blades and terrifying, multi-barreled cannons that looked like the pipes of a dark cathedral organ. To look at these dense pages today is to see a mind seemingly obsessed with the cold mechanics of destruction and the dark efficiency of death. But beneath the black ink and the precise labels, there lay a profound and silent paradox that defined his soul. Leonardo was a man who famously loved life so much that he would frequently buy caged birds in the local market just for the simple, pure joy of setting them free into the sky. He was a committed vegetarian in a world of hunters, a man who openly called war a pazzia bestialissima, a beastly madness. Why then did he spend so much of his precious life designing these nightmares of iron, wood, and fire? The answer lies not in a secret love for violence, but in his absolute, unwavering, and almost divine devotion to the laws of the physical universe. For Leonardo, a heavy cannonball in flight was not just an instrument of death. It was a physical, undeniable proof of the laws of motion, air resistance, and gravity. A tank was not just a weapon of war. It was a complex, beautiful puzzle of leverage, friction, torque, and human coordination. He was fascinated by how force could be multiplied 100-fold, how energy could be stored in a tightly coiled spring, and how a simple gear could change the direction of raw power. He was solving the world's ancient problems with the elegance of geometry, using the brutal tools of war as a quiet laboratory for the deep secrets of physics. In his mind, these machines were not built for killing, but for understanding the very fabric of reality. He was exploring the absolute limits of what was possible, treating the smoke-filled battlefield as a vast canvas for his mechanical imagination. He looked at the powerful curve of a catapult's arm and saw the exact same mathematical beauty he had once seen in the graceful arc of a bird's wing over the hills of Vinci. He was searching for the universal why that governed both the delicate flight of a white dove and the heavy burning trajectory of a mortar shell. He was a scientist in the guise of a soldier, a philosopher who used the language of engineers to talk to the stars. His machines were dreams of a distant future that the world was not yet ready to build. Blueprints for a mastery over nature that would take humanity another 5 centuries to fully realize. Listen now to the imagined sound of those magnificent machines in the silence of his workshop. In the deep stillness of your mind, you can hear the slow, rhythmic thrum-thrum of a heavy wooden gear turning against another, coated in smooth oil. It is a deep, mechanical hum, a steady, low frequency, and hypnotic vibration that resonates through the floorboards and into your very bones. Imagine the sound of a massive, hand-forged metal spring being slowly wound, a deliberate, clicking cadence that marks the steady passage of time. Click, click, click. It is the sound of perfect, unyielding order. It is the sound of logic in graceful motion. Everything is in its rightful place. The gears are greased, silent and efficient. The air in the stone workshop is cool, dim, and still, smelling faintly of cold iron, fresh sawdust, and old, thick ink. Your mind is sinking deeper and deeper into that slow mechanical heartbeat, finding a profound sense of security in the predictable, unyielding, and ancient laws of the machine. You are safe. You are protected within the clockwork of his thoughts. The world outside may be chaotic, but here, everything follows a plan. But even as he obsessed over the cold, unfeeling steel and the mathematical precision of the gears, Leonardo could never truly turn his back on the living, breathing world. He would often look up from a complex diagram of a catapult and see the way the afternoon light caught the tiny dust motes dancing in his room. or the way his young assistant's hand rested with natural grace on a wooden table. Amidst the clanking, imagined wars of his mind, he remained a poet of the human form, never forgetting that the most complex, mysterious, and beautiful machine he would ever study was not made of iron or wood, but of flesh, blood, and the flickering, eternal spark of a human soul. The gears were turning, but the heart was still watching, waiting for the next breath of life. Step out of the restless, clanging metal workshop of Milan and into the profound, ancient, and cool silence of the refectory at Santa Maria della Grazia. The air in this long hall is thin, still, and heavy with history, carrying the faint, sweet, and comforting scent of old incense, drying plaster, and beeswax candles. You are standing in a grand, high-ceilinged room where the monks traditionally take their silent meals in contemplation. But today, the far wall has seemingly vanished, replaced by a deep, luminous window into another century. Leonardo has been working on this wall for years, sometimes standing on his high wooden scaffold from the first light of dawn until the purple shadows of dusk without ever picking up a brush, simply staring at the plaster in a deep, impenetrable, meditative trance. At other times he arrives in a sudden, electric fury of inspiration, adding a single perfect stroke of color before disappearing back into the winding, narrow streets of the city. The painting unfolding before you is not a static religious icon. It is a frozen moment of pure, raw human electricity. Imagine the scene. 13 men are gathered around a long, simple table, the soft light from 3 high windows behind them, casting a natural, gentle glow over their weathered faces. Then, a single devastating sentence is spoken, cutting through the heavy air like a silver blade. "One of you will betray me." In that single breath, the room erupts in a silent explosion of emotion. Leonardo does not show us a distant, dusty ritual. He captures the immediate, visceral shock of the human heart in crisis. To your left, Peter surges forward in a sudden protective rage, his hand gripping a knife as if to shield the center. Beside him, Judas recoils instinctively into the deep shadows, his face darkened and obscured by the invisible weight of a secret already kept and a silver price already paid. Philip rises in a gesture of agonizing, beautiful helplessness, his chest open and vulnerable, his eyes pleading for a truth he cannot find. Each figure is a masterclass in the slow movement of the soul, the way a shoulder bunches in sudden fear, the way trembling fingers splay in desperate denial, and the way a head tilts in quiet, heavy sorrow. The world often looks at this wall and sees a religious milestone, but Leonardo was reaching for something much deeper, something universal. He was not merely painting a sacred event from a distant past. He was painting a massive, silent earthquake of the human spirit. He realized, through years of silent watching, that the body is simply a mirror for the unseen movements of the soul. He spent weeks in the crowded markets and noisy taverns of Milan, searching for the perfect face for each apostle, watching the way a man's brow furrowed when he was confused, or how the corner of a mouth tightened when he felt the first cold touch of guilt. He wanted to prove that a painter could do more than just describe a person's outward appearance. He could reveal the very thoughts swirling like smoke behind their eyes. In the center of this human storm, Jesus sits in a triangle of perfect, heartbreaking, and divine calm, the still point in the middle of a world that is spinning out of control. Now let that very same sense of absolute, unyielding stillness settle over you, just as it settles over the monks in this quiet, holy hall. The shouting and the gasps of the apostles begin to fade into a distant, muffled echo, leaving only a vast, protective silence. Imagine the cool gray light of the refectory dimming as the evening slowly approaches. The colors on the grand wall, the deep royal blues, the faded earthy reds, the soft dusty ochres all seem to merge into a single peaceful and velvet shadow. Every noise in the outside world has completely ceased. There is no wind, no distant footsteps, only the slow, rhythmic, and reassuring beat of your own heart. You are safe in this sanctuary of stone and spirit, where time has no power, and the only thing that exists is this moment of profound, quiet reflection. The air is cool on your skin, the stone floor is solid and dependable beneath you, and your mind is becoming as calm and clear as the still water in a silver bowl. But for Leonardo, the deep mystery of the human soul was not something that could be solved only through the observation of the face. He looked at the graceful, expressive hands of the apostles and the tension in their straining necks, and he realized that the deepest secrets of life were hidden much further than the skin could ever show. To truly understand why a hand moved in anger, or how a heart literally broke under the weight of sorrow, he knew he had to look beneath the beautiful surface. He had to go where the light of the sun did not reach, into the silent, cold, and hidden reality of the human frame, to find the blueprints of the life that had once inhabited it. As the rest of the great city of Milan sleeps under a blanket of stars, Leonardo moves like a ghost through the flickering, long shadows of a cold hospital basement. His path is lit only by the trembling, golden flame of a single thick beeswax candle that he carries with a steady hand. The air down here is starkly different. It is cold, heavy, and ancient, smelling of sharp vinegar, dried lavender, and the unmistakable, metallic tang of the house of the dead. In this era, the human body was considered a sacred, untouchable mystery, a divine vessel that very few dared to open or even question. But Leonardo, driven by a relentless curiosity that far outweighed his natural human fear, spent his nights in the silent, respectful company of those who had passed on. He worked with a surgical, reverent, and almost holy precision, his silver point stylus scratching softly and rhythmically against the thick parchment as he slowly peeled back the layers of human existence. He was a pioneer wandering in a lonely landscape of bone and sinew, venturing into a territory that no mapmaker had ever dared to describe. He marveled, in the silence of the night, at the intricate and breathtaking architecture of the human hand, the delicate, powerful pulleys of the tendons, the perfect, smooth hinges of the knuckles, and the way a dozen small ivory-like bones worked in perfect harmony to create the simple grace of a gesture. He tracked the winding, silver path of the nerves, which he poetically called the messengers of the soul, and he spent weeks puzzling over the magnificent structure of the human heart. He saw it not just as a romantic symbol of love, but as a brilliant, pulsing engine of unparalleled complexity and strength. He was the first human to truly describe the intricate valves of the heart and the way the life-giving blood swirled in the chambers, like the dark eddies of the Arno River. He had watched so intently as a boy in Vinci. He realized with a start that the same eternal laws of water, air, and pressure he had studied in the natural world were at work inside the dark, private warmth of the human chest. He wasn't just dissecting bodies in the dark. He was reading the ultimate secret book of universal design. In the profound, heavy quiet of these midnight sessions, Leonardo made a startling discovery that forever changed the way he saw every living thing. He realized that he wasn't just looking at a collection of random parts. He saw in the human body a microcosm, a tiny, perfect, and complete version of the entire universe. The branching of the dark veins mirrored the branching of the ancient trees in the forest. The flow of the internal humors echoed the rhythmic tides of the great sea. The solid, dependable structure of the skeleton was the mountain range of the self. To him, the body was the greatest, most efficient machine ever built, a divine, beautiful collaboration of cold physics and warm spirit. Every muscle was a powerful lever, every joint a perfect pivot, and every single breath was a testament to a grand, invisible architect who designed with both logic and love. He was documenting the very mechanics of what it means to be alive, turning the dark, silent reality of death into a vibrant, glowing celebration of life's infinite complexity. Listen now to the soft, rhythmic, and hypnotic sound of his quill as he records these ancient secrets onto the page. It is a gentle, steady shh sound against the heavy textured paper, as soothing and regular as the sound of breath itself. Imagine the comforting warmth of the candlelight on his hands, a soft golden glow that makes the rest of the world and all its troubles disappear into a velvet, protective blackness as the fine details of his drawings come to life. The elegant curves of the muscles, the complex lattices of the bones, the delicate web of the veins, feel your own body beginning to mirror that perfect, effortless, and divine design. Tiang, Ti, Bao, Nh, B, An, J, Tom, Si, Da, Taba, Sishino, Tabian, Togo, Tabia, Tiando, Dan Tiao, Tian Tian, and J Picon, Non Don. Your muscles are becoming as soft as the finest silk. Your bones feel as light and hollow as the bones of a bird, and your heart is beating with the steady, calm, and eternal rhythm of a deep and ancient sea. You are a masterpiece of nature, a living work of art, and in this sacred moment, you are completely at rest, protected by the wisdom of the ages. These thousands of pages of anatomical drawings, filled with his unique, mysterious mirror image handwriting, were never once meant for the public eye or for the praise of men. They were his private, sacred dialogue with the Creator, a hidden ink-stained record of a man who desperately wanted to know how the clockwork. Leonardo gathered these notebooks, these maps of the invisible soul, and kept them close to his chest, like a silent dragon guarding a hoard of silver. They became a secret library of the human experience, a treasure chest of knowledge that would remain locked away and hidden for centuries. But as he finally closed his heavy books on the dead, his restless mind turned once more to the world of the living, and to a specific, haunting, and enigmatic face that would soon demand all of his focus, all of his secrets, and all of his soul. Imagine a small, weather-worn and leather-bound book, its edges softened and darkened by decades of constant travel and the frequent touch of restless, ink-stained fingers. This is not just a collection of notes. It is a portable, private universe. Leonardo carried these precious pages tucked securely into his belt, always ready to capture a fleeting thought before it could vanish like morning mist in the warm Tuscan sun. Over the course of his long and restless lifetime, he would fill more than 7,000 pages with a chaotic, brilliant, and breathtaking map of his internal mind. If you were to open one of these journals today, you would see a world where there are absolutely no boundaries between art and science. A meticulous, pulsating drawing of a human heart sits perfectly and naturally alongside a cold mathematical formula for the flow of a great river. A detailed, delicate sketch of a rare lily shares a crowded page with a simple grocery list and a daring design for a revolutionary bridge. It is a beautiful, sprawling, and magnificent mess of pure genius. A sacred place where every question, no matter how small, was worth asking, and every tiny observation was a treasure to be carefully guarded. As you lean in closer to look at the yellowed textured parchment in the soft flickering light of a single candle, you notice something deeply strange and magnetic. The handwriting does not move from left to right, like yours or mine. Instead, it flows gracefully backward, a mysterious and elegant mirror script that starts from the right-hand edge and marches steadily toward the left. To read it, you would need to hold a polished silver mirror to the page, watching the letters flip into their rightful legible place within the reflection. Some historians say he did this to hide his radical secrets from the prying, dangerous eyes of the church. Others believe it was simply the natural, mechanical ease of a left-handed man, avoiding the smudge of wet, black ink. But there is a deeper, more intimate feeling when you see it, a sense that you are looking at a private code, a secret language meant only for a dialogue with himself. Leonardo was not writing for a grand audience or for the eyes of future generations. He was not seeking the loud applause of history or the cold approval of scholars. He was having a lifelong, silent, and profound conversation with his own soul, capturing the lightning of his brilliant thoughts before they could strike and disappear into the darkness. On these fragile pages, his curiosity is a living, breathing, and undeniable force. He asks questions that sound like the pure wonder of a small child, but carry the immense weight of a world-class philosopher. He writes simple reminders to himself, describe the tongue of a woodpecker. He wonders with a quiet intensity why the sky's blue and exactly how the moon reflects the distant light of the sun. He sketches the way a tiny whirlpool forms in a bottle of dark wine and compares it to the golden ratio found in the curve of a seashell. There is a profound, meditative, and heavy peace in this relentless, quiet searching. He was a man who saw the invisible connections that no one else in his century dared to look for. In his notebooks, complex mathematics becomes a form of poetry, and simple botany becomes a deep study of divine geometry. He was building a vast cathedral of human knowledge, one single page at a time, creating a legacy that was never actually meant to be published, but simply to exist as quiet proof that one human mind could contain the entire world within its borders. Listen now to the delicate, rhythmic, and hypnotic sound of a single page, turning in the deep protective stillness of the night. It is a soft, dry, and ancient frip-frip of aged paper, a sound that is as light and fleeting as a tired sigh. Imagine the rich, comforting scent of the old leather binding, earthy, woody, and deeply familiar. As the candle flame dances slowly, casting long, peaceful, and rhythmic shadows against the stone walls of his study, feel your own thoughts beginning to slow down, matching the steady, deliberate, and calm pace of his quill. Each stroke of the pen is a quiet step, deeper into a dream. The air in this room is cool, dim, and perfectly still, wrapped in a thick blanket of safety and silence. You are safe here, lost in the quiet, dust-scented archives of a genius. Your breath is becoming slow, regular, and effortless, a gentle tide that rises and falls in perfect unison with the turning of the pages. There is no need to understand every formula or solve every puzzle. You only need to drift in the vast, calm, and endless ocean of his magnificent imagination. In those thousands of pages, tucked amidst the complex sketches of iron gears and the subtle studies of light and shadow, there was one singular vision that appeared more than any other, a dream that seemed to haunt him with its haunting beauty and its apparent impossibility. He watched the birds over the Arno River for decades, recording the specific angle of every wing and the incredible tension of every individual feather. He was obsessed with the radical idea that man was not meant to be forever tethered to the heavy, unyielding earth. In the narrow margins of his notes, between the complicated math and the fading memories, he began to draw something that would challenge the very heavens themselves. It was his most daring, most private pursuit, a secret project that would take him from the dirt paths of the earth to the very edge of the vast blue sky. He was preparing, in the silence of his room, to finally teach the world how to fly. Imagine standing on the high, grassy crest of a sun-drenched hill in Tuscany, the long, fragrant grass brushing gently against your knees as a cool, steady breeze sweeps across the wide valley below. High above, a solitary falcon carves a perfect, effortless arc against the deep, infinite cerulean blue of the Italian sky. Leonardo stands there, perfectly still, his eyes locked onto the bird's every minute movement with a quiet, holy intensity. He isn't just watching, he is measuring the invisible forces of the world. He notes the precise moment the delicate feathers at the wingtips flare to catch a warm thermal, the subtle, masterful tilt of the tail that shifts a whole trajectory, and the sheer, silent power of a creature that has truly mastered the air. To him, the sky was not a distant, forbidden ceiling. It was a vast, open laboratory of fluid dynamics and untapped human freedom. He looked at the heavy, earth-bound nature of man and felt a profound, quiet defiance. He believed with all his soul that the same eternal laws of physics that allowed a bird to soar were waiting to be decoded and mastered by the human mind. In the quiet, dust-moted sanctuary of his workshop, the technical sketches of iron machines began to transform into magnificent dreams of flight. He drafted the ornithopter, a stunning machine with giant, bat-like wings made of fine silk and flexible cane, designed to flap with the rhythmic, powerful pulse of human muscle. He envisioned an aerial screw, a primitive but brilliant ancestor to the modern helicopter, designed to bore through the resistant air like a silver spiral through soft wood. He even sketched a simple, pyramid-shaped parachute, a vast canopy of heavy linen that promised a gentle, safe, and floating descent from the dizzying heights of the summer clouds. These were not the frantic, impossible inventions of a madman, but the deliberate, calculated projections of a scientist who understood that air was a fluid, much like the water of a river. He was designing the future in a world that still firmly believed the ground was the only place for human feet to rest. Every wooden gear, every leather pulley, and every silk rib of his flying machines was a silent prayer for a perspective that humanity had never seen before. As you look at these intricate, aging diagrams, you realize something profound about his restless genius. Leonardo did not merely attempt to give humanity heavy wings made of iron and wood. He was giving them the limitless, unbreakable wings of the imagination. He was teaching us that the boundaries of our world are only as rigid as our own lack of curiosity. He knew that even if his own machines never lifted off the dusty ground of Milan in his lifetime, the powerful idea of flight was now planted forever in the collective soul of mankind. He had turned the impossible into a series of elegant, solvable, and beautiful equations. He was a pioneer of the spirit, a man who lived his entire life with his head in the stars and his heart in the wind, proving that the greatest distance we ever have to travel is the one between what we simply see and what we finally dare to dream. Now, let that feeling of weightless, soaring freedom begin to wash over you like a soft, warm current of invisible air. Imagine yourself slowly, effortlessly lifting off the heavy, tired earth, rising gently above the hills, the ancient trees, and the silent cathedrals. The world below is becoming smaller, quieter, and more peaceful with every breath. The air around you is cool, thin, and perfectly clear, tasting of nothing but pure sunlight and endless space. You are drifting without effort on the invisible breath of the world, floating through the soft, white, and velvet canyons of the drifting clouds. Every single tension in your body is dissolving into this vast, blue, and protective expanse. Your mind is becoming as light as a feather caught in a gentle, rhythmic updraft of deep sleep. You are safe, you are free, and you are rising into a state of total, weightless tranquility. The horizon is endless, and the sky is a soft, protective blanket that wraps around your weary thoughts, carrying them into the stars. But eventually, even the most daring and tireless dreamer must return to the solid, warm earth to find their footing once more. As Leonardo's gaze finally descended from the swirling hawks and the high, lonely mountain peaks, he found himself back in the quiet, candlelit intimacy of his final studio. He sat before a fresh, smooth wooden panel, and there, in the soft, fading afternoon light, he met a face that would anchor his soul for the remaining years of his life. It was a face that held a secret more enduring than the stars, a face that would eventually change the very history of how we see ourselves and the hidden depths of the human spirit. A woman sits quietly in a simple wooden chair, her hands folded with a gentle, mountain-like stability, her dark eyes resting on yours with a gaze that seems to look through time, through space, and into the very core of your being. This is Lisa Gherardini, but to the rest of the world, she is simply the Mona Lisa. In the dim amber and honeyed glow of Leonardo's private studio, she is not a static subject or a cold likeness. She is a living presence that fills the room with an unspoken, ancient language. Leonardo did not paint her in the flat, harsh light of a typical Renaissance portrait. Instead, he placed her in a world of soft, mysterious, and infinite transitions. There are no hard lines here, no sharp, jarring edges that separate her from the living air around her. She emerges from the darkness like a precious memory, her form defined by the subtle, smoky, and divine interplay of light and shadow, a technique Leonardo perfected over a lifetime and called summa. Imagine the incredible divine patience required to create such a miracle of art. Leonardo applied the rich oil paint in hundreds of microscopic, translucent layers, each one as thin and delicate as a breath of mist on a cold morning. He worked on this single wooden panel for years, returning to it again and again in his travels, refining the invisible curve of a cheek or the soft, realistic swell of a lip. He wanted to capture the living air, the aura that surrounds a human being. The sfumato technique allowed him to blur the corners of her eyes and the very edges of her mouth, creating an expression that is never truly still, never truly finished. If you look at her directly, she seems to be on the verge of a warm smile. If you look away just for a second, the smile seems to deepen, linger, and then vanish into the shadows. It is a visual heartbeat, a masterpiece of psychological ambiguity that makes the painting feel as though it is watching you, breathing with you, just as much as you are watching it. Behind her, the landscape is not a real, physical place you could find on a map, but a dream of the primordial, ancient earth. There are jagged, blue-tinted mountains that reach for the heavens, winding, serpent-like rivers that look like the veins of the earth, and lonely bridges that lead into a misty prehistoric void. Leonardo used his deep, hard-won knowledge of geology, optics, and the movement of water to create a background that feels strangely alive, shifting in and out of focus, like the world seen through a delicate veil of rain. By connecting the woman to this ancient, changing landscape, he was making a profound and silent statement. This painting was not merely a portrait of a merchant's wife. It was a living entity, a masterpiece of biological and spiritual synthesis. He had used every secret he learned from dissecting human hearts, every law of light he had decoded from the shifting clouds, and every pattern he had found in the swirling water to create something that felt as though it was truly, deeply breathing. As you sit now in the quiet presence of this grand mystery, feel the soft, smoky shadows of the painting beginning to spread slowly into the room where you rest. The edges of your own world are starting to blur, becoming soft and indistinct, just like the delicate, masterfully painted lines of the Mona Lisa. Imagine the cool, damp, and earthy scent of the painted mountains, and the soft, velvet silence of the Italian studio. Every sharp thought, every lingering worry of your day is being softened and smoothed away by the master's brush, dissolving into a gentle amber and protective haze. The light is fading now, turning into a deep, violet, and protective dusk. You are sinking into the many translucent layers of the painting, becoming a quiet part of its timeless, peaceful energy. The world outside is receding into the distance, leaving only the peaceful, rhythmic movement of the soft shadows. Your mind is becoming as still and as deep as the water in a distant mountain lake, resting in the eternal beauty of a secret that does not need to be told in words. The air is still, the painting is alive, and you are safe. This painting was so precious to Leonardo that he could never bring himself to truly finish it or to give it away to the man who commissioned it. It became his constant, silent companion, traveling with him in his luggage as he crossed the high, snowy Alps, through the changing seasons and the shifting fortunes of his long life. He carried her through new lands and into the grand courts of foreign kings, a silent, smiling witness to his final journey. Even as his own body began to tire, and the world outside continued its restless, noisy spin, the woman with the enduring smile remained unchanged. A quiet breathing bridge between the world of the living and the eternal. Radiant peace that was waiting for him at the very end of the long road. The bustling, sun-drenched, and marble-clad streets of Rome in the early 16th century were a sharp, jarring contrast to the quiet, intimate studios Leonardo had once known in Florence and Milan. This was a city of grand, towering, and often ruthless ambitions, a place where the powerful, thick scent of burning church incense mingled constantly with the cold, sharp smell of political intrigue and religious fervor. As Leonardo walked slowly through the echoing marble halls of the Vatican, he was no longer the undisputed sun around which the artistic world revolved. He was now an elder statesman, a silver-haired observer moving through a landscape increasingly dominated by the fierce, restless energy of younger men. He watched the brooding, muscular intensity of Michelangelo as he wrestled with stone, and the graceful, prolific, and effortless brilliance of Raphael, while they were busy painting the magnificent celestial heavens of the Sistine Chapel or the grand philosophical halls of the papal apartments. Leonardo found himself relegated to the quiet, dusty, and sun-streaked corners of the Belvedere. He spent his long, solitary days not in the pursuit of grand frescoes or public monuments, but in the silent, sacred study of concave mirrors, the precise and hidden anatomy of exotic plants, and the mysterious fleeting properties of light reflecting off a polished silver bowl. In this magnificent city of loud noise and constant competition, Leonardo chose a path of profound, dignified, and heavy stillness. He watched from the cooling shadows as the younger generation vied desperately for the favor of popes and princes, their heavy hammers and busy brushes echoing through the stone corridors like thunder. But for Leonardo, the time for public shouting and artistic warfare had long since passed. He realized, in the twilight of his years, that the greatest and most enduring truths were not found in the roar of a crowd or the gold of a heavy commission, but in the quiet, patient, and humble observation of the natural world. While Rome was building massive monuments to its own temporary glory, he was seeking the final universal laws that govern the rhythmic movement of a wave or the complex growth of a human heart. He was perfectly content to be a silent, invisible observer in a world of loud performers, finding a deep, resonant sense of internal peace in the realization that his greatest masterpiece was not a painting on a cold wall, but the vast, interconnected, and infinite library of knowledge he carried within his own mind. Imagine a small, elegant, and perfectly peaceful manor house made of warm red brick and white tuffeau stone, nestled gently in the lush, green, and rolling heart of the Loire Valley. This is Clos-Lucé, a place where the air is eternally sweet with the scent of blooming roses, and the river Loire flows past just beyond the trees with a slow, melodic, and hypnotic murmur. The year is 1516, and Leonardo has finally found his ultimate sanctuary. King Francis I, a man who admired Leonardo not just as a famous artist, but as a true father of wisdom, has given him this peaceful estate and the reverent title of first painter, engineer, and architect to the king. Here, the heavy, exhausting weight of the world's expectations has been lifted forever. Leonardo spends his long, quiet days wandering through the sun-dappled gardens, his long silver beard catching the golden light as he watches the blue dragonflies dance over the still water. His mind finally at rest in the soft, protective embrace of the French countryside. His relationship with the young King Francis was one of the most beautiful and respectful friendships in the entire history of the Renaissance. The king did not demand grand, exhausting paintings or massive bronze horses. He simply wanted to sit in Leonardo's quiet presence and listen to him talk. Imagine them now, sitting together on a weathered stone terrace as the sun begins to set slowly over the rolling green hills, casting long, golden, and amber shadows across the manicured lawn. They speak in low, hushed, and rhythmic tones about the nature of the human soul, the hidden, divine geometry of the stars, and the secret way the entire universe breathes in unison. In these final quiet years, Leonardo was no longer an employee, a servant, or a competitor. He had become a living treasure of all humanity, a bridge between the physical world we touch and the realm of pure, eternal thought. The king cherished every word, every delicate sketch, and every long, silent moment shared with the man who had seen more of the world's secrets than any other. As the sun finally dips below the horizon, painting the vast sky in soft, bleeding shades of violet, amber, and deep, royal indigo, let your own mind drift into that same state of ultimate, unquestioned peace. The world, at closely slowing down, prepared for a long and incredibly graceful rest. The birds are settling silently into the ancient trees. The river is a dark, silver thread in the deepening twilight, and the stone walls of the manor are still warm from the day's gentle heat. Feel the heavy, comforting, and liquid warmth of that setting sun on your own skin, smoothing away the very last remaining traces of your long day. The light is fading now, leaving a soft, velvet, and protective darkness that wraps around you like a heavy cloak of silk. Everything is finished. Every question has been asked. Everything is exactly as it should be. You are floating in a vast sea of calm, warm, and golden energy, sinking deeper and deeper into the soft cushions of a perfectly peaceful evening on the 2nd of May in the year 1519, within the quiet, sacred, and candle-lit walls of Clos-Lucé. A heart that had beaten with the relentless curiosity of 1,000 lifetimes finally slowed to a graceful, inevitable stop. Legend tells us that he passed away peacefully in the very arms of King Francis. His final breath, a soft, lingering sigh that carried him effortlessly from the world of physical form into the world of eternal light. He left behind a world that he had fundamentally and permanently reshaped, not with the violence of a sword, but with the quiet power of a pen and the delicate grace of a brush. He was laid to rest in the small, ancient stone chapel of Saint Hubert, a place of profound, heavy and enduring silence, where the soft light filters through stained glass to dance in colorful patterns upon the cool floor. Throughout his long and restless life, Leonardo had been obsessed with the profound concept of work and its sacred relationship to rest. He often wrote in his journals, "As a well-spent day brings happy sleep, so a life well spent brings a happy death." He understood, perhaps better than anyone who has ever lived, that the ultimate reward for a mind that never stopped searching, never stopped dreaming, and never stopped questioning was the final gift of an eternal, undisturbed, and beautiful peace. He had lived his life with a breathtaking, almost divine intensity, pushing the very boundaries of what it meant to be a human being. And now he was finally earning the grand rest he had described so many times in the margins of his notebooks. There is no tragedy in this ending. There is only a sense of profound, magnificent, and holy completion. The great, complex clockwork of his life had reached its final, perfect year, and the magnificent machine was now silent, still, and at peace. Now let that very same sense of completion settle over your own body. Imagine the heavy ancient stone of the chapel, cool and solid, standing as a silent guardian over the absolute silence of the night. The world outside has completely and utterly vanished. There is no time here, no worry, no noise, and no tomorrow. There is only the vast, protective, and warm embrace of history and the deep, dark, and beautiful sleep of a genius. Your breath is becoming as slow, as deep, and as rhythmic as the turning of the earth itself. You are sinking into the same eternal, radiant peace that Leonardo found a space where all difficult questions are answered and all hidden mysteries are finally solved in the beautiful silence. Sleep now, surrounded by the echoes of his infinite wisdom, safe in the realization that a life lived with wonder is a life that never truly ends. Leonardo has been gone from our physical world for over 500 years, yet his eyes are still looking at the world through our own. Every time we stop to look at a swirling pattern in a mountain stream, or wonder with a smile why the clouds take the shapes they do, we are seeing the world exactly as he taught us to see it. His notebooks, once hidden in the deep shadows of history, have been found, preserved, and cherished, revealing a mind that was already living in our distant future. His true legacy is not found in the crowded museums or the heavy history books. It is found in the very act of being curious. It is found in every child who stares in silence at the stars, every designer who seeks the perfect, invisible balance of form and function, and every person who simply pauses to look just a little bit closer at the hidden beauty of a falling leaf. The true genius of Leonardo was not in the things he finished, for he left so much of his work undone. It was in the fact that he never, ever stopped asking the simple question. He proved to us all that imagination, when married to patient, loving observation, is the most powerful force in the entire universe. As you drift now toward the first soft light of your dreams, let that same curiosity guide you. Let it turn your sleep into a journey of discovery and your rest into a sanctuary of beautiful new ideas. Leonardo's story is not a closed book. It is a living, breathing reminder that a single life, lived with total wonder, can echo through eternity. When you wake tomorrow, Look at the world with fresh eyes, as if you are seeing the light for the very first time. And as you fade now into the deep, dark, and protective blue of the night, remember the woman with the smile that never fades, and the man who taught us that the most beautiful thing we can ever experience is the mystery. What secret do you think lies behind Leonardo's most famous smile? Perhaps you will find the zest answer in the quiet of your dreams tonight. Share your thoughts with the world when the sun rises, but for now, just sleep